All right, guys, this is the Unit 7.2 notes. This is in this packet on page 7. So today's learning target is I can find the missing sides of right triangles using 45, 45, 90 properties. Okay. So there are two types of what we call special right triangles. The first one we're going to learn about today, 45, 45, 90. The reason it's called 45, 45, 90 is because the right triangle has angles measures of 45, 45, and 90. The 90 degrees is obviously the right angle. Okay. There are certain rules that we can apply to find the missing sides of a particular triangle that looks like this. Now, I'm going to show you how we would get there using this thing. Remember, this is called the Pythagorean theorem. I'm going to show you how we would actually determine the rule ourselves based on the knowledge we already have. Now, what I'm about to show you will not show up on a test. So if you'd rather skip this and go down to where I start explaining the triangles, that's okay, but I'm going to show you how you would figure this out using the Pythagorean theorem. So first of all, if I said that my two legs, those are the two sides that meet at a right angle, let's say they were both 3, measure of 3, could we find C? Okay, so if this is A, B, and C is the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle, I could do this. I could do 3 squared plus 3 squared equals C squared. And I could keep solving this until I have C. So I'm going to do that sort of quickly. 3 squared is 9 plus 3 squared is 9 equals C squared. 9 plus 9 is 18 equals C squared. And then I would find the square root of both sides. So C would equal the square root of 18. Okay, but that's not our final answer. We would need to then simplify that. So 18 would reduce to 9 and 2, then 3 and 3. This is all stuff we did in 7.1. The 3's are a pair, so it gets to be freed from the radical. 2 is under the square root. So we'd have 3 root 2. So in other words, C is equal to 3 root 2. Okay, so there's a pretty clear pattern, right? If the legs are 3, then the hypotenuse is 3 square root of 2. Okay? 3, 3, 3 square root of 2. Same thing if it was 5 and 5. This would be 5 square root of 2. Doesn't matter how big it gets. 80 and 80, 80 square root of 2. Okay? Any of those work. It's a pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to label, if this was n and this was n, let's call this side n square root of 2 going forward. Okay? Now, in order to solve problems using this rule, there is an anchor chart that we have been using in class. Looks like this. Okay, if you don't have this, I would take a picture of this right now real quick. Particularly, I want you to have these steps. So maybe pause the video and take a picture of that real quick. These are my 4 steps in solving a 45, 45, 90 problem. Okay, let's look. So step 1 is I'm going to label my triangle. Okay, how do I know how to label my triangle? Well, I look right here. I'm going to use the n values. Okay, my 2 legs, which are the 2 sides that meet at a right angle, so 3 and 3, I'm going to label those both n. So this is an n, this is an n, this is an n squared root of 2. That's all it is. I'm labeling my triangle. Remember, n squared of 2 is n squared of 2 because it is across from the right angle. Okay? We have labeled our triangle. I need to circle what is given. So I know that n is 3 here and n is 3 here. So I know n is 3, I know n is 3. I don't know anything about this. This is a variable. That's not helpful. Okay, so I've circled what's given. Identify, solve for whatever n is. Okay, n is clearly 3. So n equals 3. So now I know n equals 3, and I need to plug in the value for n where it is missing. So n is 3, but look, Wherever I see the letter N, I can now replace it with 3. So N, I'm going to replace that with 3. So A is going to equal 3 square root of 2. Okay. We can see our pattern, right? Wasn't it the same pattern we just did? 3 square root of 2. 3 square root of 2. Same exact numbers. Works every single time. Now, some of you are like Mr. Colston, that was dumb. Why would I ever spend that much time doing that? Why would I do all those steps? Well, it's going to get trickier later. Like, check out this one, where my pencil is right here. All right, let's try this one. You might just click at this point. It's n square root 2. So I'm not going to do all the steps because this one's pretty simple. This would just be 5.5 square root of 2, right? 5.5 square root of 2. As you can see, these two are basically the same exact problem. Okay, B is my hypotenuse there. So if this was 3 square root 2, this is 5.5, 5.5, 5.5 square root 2. All right, let's take a look at one where the steps is helpful again. All right, here we go. We're going to label our triangle. Okay, across from the right angle is n square root of 2. And then the legs are n and n. Check. We've labeled our triangle. We're going to circle what is given. Okay, we don't know anything about the d right here or the d. So we know this. Anytime we circle it, we can now have an equation. So 3 square root of 2 is going to be equal to n square root of 2. Sweet. Okay. So if this is our equation, we're going to identify or solve for n. How do I get n by itself? I'm going to divide both sides by root 2. N is now by itself. Is this simplified, though? It is not quite simplified, but the root 2 and the root 2 could cancel each other out. We're left with 3 equals n. 3 equals n. 3 equals n. So wherever I see the letter n, I can now replace it with 3. So instead of n right here, I'm going to replace it with 3. Instead of n right here, I'm going to replace it with 3. Both the d's are 3. Okay. So as you can see, these two triangles are identical. In this one, they gave you the legs, and you had to figure out that the hypotenuse was 3 root 2. In this one, it was backwards. They gave you the hypotenuse, and you had to figure out that the legs were 3. Got it? So these two triangles are the same thing, it's just backwards. All right, how about this one? Looks pretty simple, doesn't it? But it's not. Okay, let's take a look at here. We're going to label this triangle. Here's my right angle. So across from it is going to be n square root of 2. My legs are both n. Okay, now we've labeled our triangle. What are we going to do? Circle what is given. You should now understand that we're not going to circle the variables. We're going to circle a number, right? Something that's actually given to us. At this point, we can make an equation out of that. So 5 would equal n square root of 2. Okay, how do we get n by itself at this point? Solving for n, we're going to divide both sides by root 2. N would equal 5 divided by square root of 2. Okay, so we have n by itself, but it's not quite reduced. Okay, in this situation, what I don't like about it is that a square root is on the bottom of my fraction. That's what I don't like. Okay. In this situation, we always have to multiply the top by the radical from the bottom. So I'm going to multiply the top times the radical from the bottom, which is radical 2. Okay, I've done it. Now I'm going to free the radical in the denominator. That means that this radical goes away, and I am left with 5 root 2 over 2. That is what n now equals. Okay, so wherever I see the letter n, I can now replace it with 5 root 2 over 2. Wherever I see the letter n, I can now replace it with 5 root 2 over 2. 5 root 2 over 2. So that means that C in both cases is equal to 5 root 2 over 2. See how that one got a little bit complicated, right? Okay. What about the next one? All right, here we go. This problem right here, this triangle. Here's my steps. I'm going to label my triangle. So here is my hypotenuse, because it's across from the right angle. This is in root 2. Okay, what about my legs? This is in, this is in. Okay, in root 2. All right, I'm going to circle what is given. This is not given, but this is given. So n is equal to 5 root 5. So that means wherever I see the letter n, I've identified solve for n successfully. So whatever n is, I'm going to replace it with 5 root 5. Okay, right here, n should now be 5 root 5 times root 2. Notice how the 5 root 5 did not replace the root 2. Okay, I just placed it right next to the root 2, and now I still have some work to do. So at this point, I'm going to rewrite this down here. I have e equals 5 root 5 times root 2. Okay, that is not simplified. That is not an answer that I can circle yet. But I can simplify this. E would be equal to 5. There's nothing else I can multiply by 5 because there's nothing else outside of a radical. But 5 and 2 are both inside of a radical. So I could write something like this. 5 times 2 inside the radical, which would give us to 5 root 10. Okay? And if we tried to reduce that anymore, we couldn't, because we would just get prime numbers. So E is going to be equal to 5 root 10. Okay? Last one. We're going to label the triangle. Across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse. These are the legs. Okay? Now what is given? Circle what is given. Going to equal them, set them equal to each other. 4 square root of 3 equals n square root of 2. 4 square root of 3 equals n square root of 2. Okay? I'm going to divide both sides by the square root of 2 to get it by itself. So now n is by itself, yes? Check it out. N is now by itself. But I don't like this as a final answer. Okay, I don't like that as a final answer because the square root is on bottom. So let's rewrite that right here. So we give ourselves some room. We need to simplify this. So if my square root's on bottom, I now need to go back to my rules here. I'm going to multiply the top by the radical from the bottom. Multiply the top by the radical from the bottom. And I would be left with 4 square root of 6 over 3, the radical in the denominator, just 2. Again, this is still not done yet because 4 over 2 can be reduced to just 2. So n would be equal to 2 square root of 6. So wherever I see the letter n, I'm going to replace it with 2 root 6. So f up here is going to be 2 root 6. F up here is going to be 2 root 6. That's my answer. F equals 2 root 6. Okay? So guys, like I said, I really think the steps help you a lot. So if you have not taken a picture of these steps, do so now. The 45, 45, 90 steps. You're going to label the triangle, circle what is given, and then identify and then plug in. Okay, don't overthink it. It's not as bad as you think. The homework is pages 8 through 9. All right? Have a great day. Thanks.